Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. A few weeks ago, my friend Adi Klevit of the Business Success Consulting Group had me as a guest on her Systems Simplified podcast. On the show, we talked about the importance of creating goals for your business and your team, and then helping your team get aligned around those goals and engaged in achieving them. We also talked about some things you can do to create accountability to ensure success. Adi was kind enough to allow me to rebroadcast that conversation. So here is my appearance on the Systems Simplified podcast.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the Systems Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And I'm very excited to announce today's guest, Ken Trupke. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Adi. How are you?
Doing great. It's great to have you on the show. And I am very excited to have you here because we're going to have a great conversation about getting clarity for businesses about their goals and talking about accountability and how they actually can execute those goals. You know, we get excited about those things, right? So, you're the founder of Clarity Advisors. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about Clarity Advisors?
Sure. What we try to do is come in and we're going to help businesses focus their teams. What we found is that teams tend to be all over the map because there's usually some kind of communication issue. But we're going to help focus those teams to grow the business, to increase sales, and to ultimately grow profits.
Great. And who do you work with?
We're going to work with business owners and leaders. It doesn't necessarily have to be the owner of businesses, typically from $1 to $20 million. Somebody with a team of 5 to 50.
Great. So what changes do you provide for those leaders?
Well, typically what I find is that companies, as I said, people are coming to work trying to do their best. But when we're not clear about what good looks like, when we're not clear what we're trying to do and what it looks like to win, then people just do what they think is the right thing. And with good intention, but that just means people might not be aligned. And so it's typical to come into a business with, say, 20 people who are moving in 37 different directions because we're not clear about what we're trying to get them to do. So we want to come in and understand what are those goals? What are the few things that we're trying to accomplish, whether that's this quarter or this year or even this week, and make sure that we're really clear about what it is we're trying to do so people can align around that and put all their good intentions and all their good efforts into that focused goal.
Right. So how did you get into it? Give us a little bit more about your background and how did you get into advising leaders on that?
Yeah, well, as always with everyone, it's an interesting story, or at least not a straight and clear path. So I started my career with two big consulting and accounting firms, Arthur Andersen and Price Waterhouse. And Price Waterhouse is now PwC and Arthur Andersen is no more. But I was in the consulting side, not the accounting side. And I got to see a lot of different businesses. And it was the time of business process reengineering, we're calling it. It's now kind of changed into lean manufacturing. But the idea was to come in and simplify things and get people doing the right things and making sure that we were consistent in those things so that we could correct errors. There was a lot of manufacturing companies. And I just loved that kind of work. And I loved going into a lot of different companies. And I happened to have the opportunity to work with one of the former managers at one of those accounting firms who moved on to private equity. And one of their early businesses was an injection molding company in Michigan. And I moved there for what was supposed to be 2 years and turned into 14 years. And I just learned on the job, learned from the ground up, working with people, how to get people working together and figured out what worked and what didn't. And then that after we sold that business And I moved down. I went from essentially position to position, sometimes months at a time, sometimes years long, sometimes only one company at a time, and sometimes multiple things going on at once, but all kind of turnaround type opportunities and all around the same idea of getting people aligned and engaged.
Interesting. So what made you start Clarity Advisors?
So that's when I left the injection molding company. I hadn't named it Clarity Advisors yet, but it was essentially going in on this kind of fractional basis, if it was part-time or as an interim, if it was more full-time, going from project to project. And looking back a couple of years ago, I said, this has really been it's been essentially an advisory service business. And so I just rebranded as Clarity Advisors and been doing that moving forward.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about your methodology. How do you help leaders identify clearly, gain that clarity of what they need to do or where they're going or what are the main things that they need to concentrate on?
Yeah, and it starts at the top. If the leader doesn't know what they're trying to achieve, it's really difficult for everyone on the team to try to help them achieve that goal. So I like to say that the leader's job is to define the what and then let the team figure out the how. The how is kind of the fun part. If I know what you want me to do, figuring out how to do that, that's what's the challenge, and that's what people like to engage in doing. And I define micromanagement as when the leader defines the what and the how, and now you're just following really clear, specific directions. You've got no latitude, no autonomy, and that's just not fun. So, but it starts back with that what. So what are we trying to do? Who are the customers we're trying to serve, and what are we trying to deliver for them, whether that's a product or a service? But let's be really clear about what we're trying to do. And then is it grow a certain percentage over this next year? Are we trying to add a certain number of customers in the next quarter? Are we trying to implement a new software system? What is it we're trying to do? And then once we've got clarity from the leaders or the leadership, if it's a leadership team, then we can start communicating down to the broader team of what it is we're trying to do and help them to align. What's their role then? Now that we know what the goal is, how can you align your activities day in and day out to help us succeed in that goal?
Absolutely. So, if somebody doesn't know what they are going to achieve, how do you help them figure that one out as the first step?
Yeah, that can be challenging sometimes because they're like, get bigger or make more money or grow. And it comes down to kind of that SMART goals idea where you've got to be specific and measurable. It's just like in your personal life. I want to lose weight, or I want to read more. Well, unless you define what that is, how do you know if you've ever achieved that? So I try to just help them. Let's start with that concept that they have in their head. So they say, I want to grow. Okay. How much have you grown in the past? Or do you have a specific number you'd like to hit? Because sometimes it's just nice to have those kind of arbitrary, like, I want to get to 1 million, or I want to get to 10 million, whatever. Or I want to make 1 million, or I want to make 5 million, whatever it is. So let's try to go from that general to get down to something specific and measurable. And maybe they're in the midst of a software implementation. Like, I'd like to have this software implemented by the end of the year. Okay, great. That's really defined. And now we can take that to the team and they can figure out what it's going to take to get that accomplished. But we've got to start with something specific. And if you don't know what that is, we can kind of have conversations and guide that along. Typically, though, especially if you've got a leadership team, goals are not hard to find. It's not what are the goals? It's how do we limit ourselves? Like I say, you come in and you got people, you have people moving in more directions than there are people because it always seems like there's a good idea. There's no limit and no lack of good ideas out there. What we've got to do is say, okay, but we can't do everything. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. So if all the goals that you guys on this leadership team or you as an owner have, let's narrow that down to 1 to 3 that we can tackle over this time period. Again, you got to focus. If we don't focus, if we just try to do everything, well, then we don't get anything done.
You're absolutely right. So our listeners are listening right now and they go, yeah, I actually suffer from that, the shiny object syndrome or whatever you want to call it. And I have a lot of goals. I have a lot of ideas, which is a great thing to have because as a visionary, you envision things, you have ideas. You are creative, you have imagination, which is wonderful. But what should they ask themselves in order to focus, in order to actually define the goals that they should be working on this quarter, as an example?
Yeah, and that's such a good question, because just the mechanics of doing this can feel really daunting. And if you just ask people like, what are your goals? You don't usually get a nice, crisp quarterly breakdown of 1 to 3 things, because it feels overwhelming, because we do have so many good ideas. And yeah, the shiny object syndrome, or what you've heard would be good, or what people are telling you should do, or just all the 100 things in your head that you want to accomplish. So we've just got to narrow it down. And I like to use return on investment. I like to encourage people to say, if you invest, you're always limited. No matter how much we have a limited amount of time, money, and energy. So when we invest our time, money, and energy, say this quarter, what would we like to get out of that? And if you look at maybe the 10 projects on the list, okay, if we put time, money, and energy into this one, what's the expected outcome? Next one, what's the expected outcome? And then you can use that as a way to prioritize, to say, well, there's a big return on number 4 versus number 1. Now, it doesn't necessarily, by doing that, you're not necessarily going to get a nice, clean 1 through 10 obvious list, but you'll start to see, hey, these seem to have high return and these seem to have lower return. So you can start to weed some out. So now maybe we're down to a list of 5. Okay, of the 5, how do those rank? And ultimately, it comes down to preference. You can say, well, number 3 doesn't really return as much as number 2, but boy, we would feel really good if we could accomplish number 3, because that's been on our plate for a year now, and we would just like to get that accomplished. Okay, there's some subjectivity here. It's not just math and super straightforward fact base. If it was easy, it would already be done. So there's some judgment, there's some discretion. And so let's go ahead and just pick a project. The key is, let's get it down to 1 to 3 projects that have a good return on our investment. And what exactly those are and in what order matters a lot less. Because frankly, if we can get those done, we can go tackle 3 more next quarter. And if we do that again and again, by the end of the year, we've knocked down 10 to 15 things. Well, that's a pretty successful year for most companies.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I use the same methodology in terms of process documentation. We document processes for companies. It's a done it for you service. And people ask me, where should I start? And I ask the same question. What area of the company, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment? And that is where we start. So I love that. I totally agree. All right, Ken. So tell me some of your tactics or some of the things that you recommend business owners to use to get the accountability and actually it's one thing to set the goals, but it's also the execution requires accountability. So what are some of the methods that you have seen that are helpful to accomplish an accountability and basically follow through of the goal to a done?
Yeah, that's such a challenge. That is kind of the key question and the key challenge for businesses, because you can fairly easily get to the list of projects and know what you want, but then getting that actually accomplished and getting the team aligned and actually engaged in doing that work. And the key word there, you said it, is accountability. How do we get people to be accountable to their specific part of the project? And one tool that I've used is a very simple, in real physical space whiteboard, where you've got the days of the month across the top and people's names down the side, and you put Post-it notes in the squares. That's the day and the name of, if somebody, like, let's say I ask you to do something, so on your name, and you tell me you can have it done by, say, the 31st of the month. Well, then under 31, we would put that Post-it note with your name. And now neither of us needs to worry about it again, or at least talk about it again. I know that you committed to having that done on the 31st. So I don't have to say, are you done? 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 And check in with you every day and make you crazy and make me crazy. Unless you come to me ahead of time and tell me I'm not going to get that done on the 31st, I'm just going to assume it's going to get done. And then what we do is we use that board. What I encourage teams to do is have that board physically available in their stand-up. And I highly, highly encourage people to have a daily stand-up. And even if I get pushback and we can just get it to a weekly stand-up, this will still work, as long as you're meeting on a very consistent basis. Then what you do is in that daily stand-up, you just look at the board and say, okay, today's the 8th. let's look at down the column of the 8th. Who had things they committed to somebody else? You just, is it done? Is it done? Is it done? You just pull them off, the sticky notes off the whiteboard. And if it's done, you move it to done. And if it's not, well, then there's kind of a problem. But then we're going to move it to what the new date is. You're like, okay, we're all right here. You didn't get it done. When can you have it done? And let's move it to that date. But it makes it much more visibly accountable. And there's a lot of peer pressure that way, but in a good way. We're not trying to play gotcha. We're trying to have successes. We're trying to say, hey, great job, guys. We had 5 things due to each other today, and we got them all done, or whatever it is. And so it's a way to promote visible accountability and to make sure that there's some level of peer pressure. Like, you either need to renegotiate that deal or show up on the day of the huddle and have your thing done, or it's going to be uncomfortable. And we want that. We want some level of discomfort because, hey, you made a commitment. We're here to get things done for the benefit of our customers. And when we don't get things done, we not only let our customers down, we let our teammates down, and ultimately we let ourselves down. And nobody wants that. So how can we just kind of gamify it in a way that makes it work? But in the end, whether you have a whiteboard or you don't, you just need to make sure that there's commitment. And I like to say there's only 2 acceptable outcomes once you've made a commitment. If you tell me you're going to have something to me by Friday, then you either have it done on Friday or you tell me ahead of time so that I can make adjustments, because maybe I can find somebody else to do it. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's for a customer of mine. And so I can negotiate with that customer to get an extension, or maybe I can help you with it. Or maybe we need to clear your plate to get more capacity for you to be able to get this done and push other things off to the side. I don't know, but at least I have choices and options. But if you can wait till Friday morning, go, oh, hey, Ken, by the way, not going to get that done. Or worse, you wait till Tuesday and I go, hey, did that thing get done Friday? You're like, oh, actually, no, it didn't. I'm still working on it. Like, well, now what? Now we're way behind. And that, again, isn't good for anybody. Not good for customers, not good for the team, not good for me.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Let's talk about those standing meetings, like the morning huddles. What is your recommendation? Like, what would be a good agenda for a morning huddle?
Oh, I love that question because I love the daily huddle. I encourage teams to break it into a couple pieces. The first thing I like to do is have some kind of good news and appreciation. I love teams to appreciate each other publicly. I think we can get a lot of momentum. We can create a lot of energy, create a lot of excitement, and just remind each other that, hey, we're in this together. And people love to be recognized and appreciated. And so could we just take a couple minutes at the beginning and just, raise your hands, and I want to publicly recognize, hey, Susan did a great job yesterday. Really appreciate, she got me the thing actually a day early. It was awesome. Or I called Hector over in service and had a quick question, and he jumped on it and got me the answer so I could get it back to the customer. I just really appreciate the responsiveness, whatever it is. And then good news. The good news could be businessy, like we closed a sale, or we got a thank you note from a customer, or maybe it's my dog had puppies. Maybe it's my kid had a birthday. Again, reminding each other that we're people who like each other and are on the same team, and just try to build some bonds and some connection. But we're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes. Listen, the whole huddle is 10 minutes. So don't think this is like a 2-hour project every day. It's 10 minutes. So the first 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to do appreciation and recognition. Then I suggest you go into metrics. Do 2 to 3 minutes of metrics. And those could be metrics that you look at every day. If it's a manufacturing company, maybe you're looking at efficiency or shipments, on-time deliveries or something. But maybe it's something that you only check weekly. Maybe it's a marketing update and you want to have marketing metrics. You only look at those once a week because every day they're not moving enough to make it meaningful. But each week you can see some progress, whatever it is. So however you do, whether it's daily or weekly type metrics, but let's get some numbers on the board. Maybe it's sales, but it doesn't have to be just sales, because ideally it's things that we control. And typically you don't control sales. You can control your activity. So we might want to report out how many calls we made or how many customers we contacted, something like that. But to say how much business we closed, typically not in our control. And so I like to have metrics that we can control, so we can come in and go, yeah, yesterday we worked really hard, and today here's the number, and today we're going to work really hard, and tomorrow we're going to see the number, and we're going to see it move, and we control that. Again, people like to keep score. And so when you can do things to change the scoreboard, not just be a passive observer, well, it's just a lot more fun. And then So that's another 2 or 3 minutes. And then that last 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to have the accountability. This is the part where if we've got that whiteboard, we're going to go through what was due today and did we accomplish what we said for each other. And it's also a place to just raise your hand if you're stuck. If just something popped up this morning or late yesterday that you need help with, you can just raise your hand and go, hey, I'm going to need some help. Now, maybe you don't even know who you need help from. You're just like, this is how I'm stuck. I don't even know what to do next. And somebody else can chime in and go, oh, I can help you with that. Or you need to talk to this person. Or you might know exactly who you need. Hey, I need to contact Katerina. Sales, can you help me with this question? I've got a customer question. Katerina, I think you're familiar with this. Can you help me? And then you can set a time. It doesn't have to be this second or even today. Like, yeah, if you don't need it today, can we get that done by Friday? Yeah, great. And then maybe you create that Post-it note and put it up there. We're going to solve this problem by Friday, whatever. But it's a chance to raise your hand and get unstuck. So what things do we have to do working together? It's just a chance that now you don't have to bug people all day if it's not urgent, because tomorrow morning I'm going to have the whole group in front of me in the huddle, and I can ask my question then. I can get my help then. So it's a way to kind of batch requests if they're not super urgent. And that's your 10 minutes. So, 2, 3, 4 minutes of appreciation and recognition, 2, 3, 4 minutes of metrics, and then who's stuck and how do we do on accountability? And that's your 10 minutes. And it gets the team. You've got some energy. You've had appreciation. You know what the numbers are. You know what the score looks like. And you know what your assignments are if you need to help people, and you've gotten the help that you need. And now we can go get back to work.
I love it. So what are some of the don'ts of a standing huddle? Like what's something you should not do during the standing huddle?
I would say don't solve problems in the huddle unless it's immediate, like, oh, this is what that is. Have you checked the thermostat? Like, okay, great, I'll check the thermostat. But if it's like, well, have you done this and this? No, okay, well, if you haven't done that, then it could be. And all of a sudden you got 2 people problem solving and, 10, 20 people standing around or staring at their screen if it's a Zoom meeting. You're kind of wasting their time. So you need a facilitator who's going to say, hey, guys, let's take that offline. Love the interaction. Love that you guys are jumping in, problem solving. Let's just take that offline. Let's get through the huddle. So don't let people problem solve unless it's really, really quick. And the other big tip is just don't get distracted. Don't let some conversation, get too carried away. But also you really have to have a balance there, because this is a time where we're trying to build culture. This is a time where we're trying to connect as people. So I encourage facilitators, don't be too quick to pull the plug on a conversation or shut something down. Or somebody's like, yeah, my dog had puppies. We're super excited. Like, oh, my dog had puppies too. Don't be like, hey, whoa. We're not doing dog stories. Like, well, maybe we can, as long as you're not in jeopardy, if it's going to go on for 5 minutes and now it's a 20-minute meeting, as long as it's just a few more seconds, let it go. Let people interact. Let people have a reason to have a conversation. But it's a balancing act, because you don't want it to go on too long, and all of a sudden we're spending 10 minutes talking about dogs, and people like, what are we doing?
No, we do need to start on time and end on time.
Yes.
That's very important, because that respects everybody's time.
Absolutely.
Create that rapport. You create a great positivity for the day, and it's a way of basically people knowing that they have to be accountable. So I do think it's very important, and it's great. Ken, this has been a great conversation. You're definitely very knowledgeable at what you do. Great advice. If people want to get a hold of you, where should they go?
Oh, I appreciate that. So the easiest way to reach me, twofold. I'll give you an email. It's ken@clarityadvisors.io, or just give me a call or text, 616-822-2998. And I'm a huge fan of the phone. I think that we connect best when we're synchronous. So not I email you, email it back and forth, or texting back and forth. I'll do those, and that's fine if that's more convenient. But ultimately, I'd love to get on something like this where we're talking to each other at the same time and we can really connect. So I would love a phone call, and I'm open to a conversation. If you've got a question about something, or you think there might be something in your organization I might be helpful with, I'd love to just talk about that. And if I'm going to be a good fit, I will raise my hand and say, I think I can help you. And if not, I would love to just be able to point you in a different direction. Like, hey, actually, there's a book out there that I think if you plowed through that book, you could get a lot of ideas and probably solve this problem. And so I'm happy to help however that looks. I've tried to have an abundance mindset, that there's plenty of things to do out there. We're never going to run out. And so we don't need to hold everything so closely that, every time somebody calls, I'm going to try to talk them into selling them something of my services or whatever. Like, no. I've got plenty going on. Everybody's plenty busy. There's plenty of work out there. There's plenty of things to fix and improve. So just give me a call. And if I can help, I'll jump in. If not, I'm going to point you to the right direction. Maybe I know somebody, maybe I've got a resource, whatever. And I'm always happy to help.
It's great. Fantastic. Well, Ken, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisors Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.